Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to season 3 of the F Y'all podcast. First of all, before we do anything, let me say thank you. We are 3 seasons deep, and it's because of you guys. You guys have been so supportive of the podcast, and I cannot thank you guys enough. I was sitting around last night just thinking about it. When we initially started this show, CT was like, we'd be lucky if we make it 5 episodes. And here we are, 43 episodes in, Pops. And I am
miracle.
So why it got to be a miracle?
It's a miracle.
So I just want to take a second and say thank you so much to all the viewers and the listeners of the F Y'all podcast. Like I said, we cannot thank you guys enough for helping us take this thing to the next level. Like I said, we didn't know where this was going to go when we initially started it, but to be 3 seasons in is absolutely amazing, and we could not have done it without you guys. So thank you so much. Now, we are starting off season 3 a little differently. You guys are used to watching the F Y'all podcast and seeing a lot of professional wrestlers, a lot of fitness influencers, karate champions, actors. Used to seeing so many different people, but today's show to start off season 3 is going to be a little different. We are all aware of what's going on in Gaza right now, and CT hit me the other day, and he was just like, we need to talk about it. And I will say this, from my perspective, just all I know about what's going on over there is what the news is putting out there. And I think a lot of us understand that sometimes the news media can just put out what they want. So I thought this was going to be a great show. And we have Dr. Muhammad here, who has been doing work over in Palestine. And I definitely want to hear his story. And before I go into the guests, I know, Pops, you had some stuff you wanted to start the show off with, so I'm going to let you start it, then I'll go into the intros and we'll get started.
Okay. I wanted to start off by saying, let you guys know right up front, very good friends with Dr. Nerenberg and very, very good friends with the beast from the East, Dr. Mo. I've been knowing Arnie about 25 years and probably 15 now.
Yeah, about 10, 15 years.
Yeah, 10, 15 for Dr. Mo. So I'm very good friends with both of them. And that's easy for me to do because of my mom, Mother Fletcher. My mother always told me, Dr. Mo, from a little bitty boy, she always said that if you want to go to heaven, which I do, if you want to go to heaven, son, that you must love everybody. Everybody. I said, Mama, even if they hate me, because I grew up I was born in the Jim Crow South, and it was still white only water fountains, white colored only entrances, riding in the back of the bus. I grew up in that during that era, So I said, even people that hate me for no reason other than I gotta love them too. She said, son, especially them, because it is easy to love people that love you back. That ain't no problem. Oh, you love me, I love you back, no problem. But if you can love somebody that hates you, then you're doing something. That is what my mom describes as Christ-like love. That's the love, that's the kind of love that it takes to get you in heaven. So it's very easy for me to have a Palestinian friend and a Jewish friend. It's very easy to me. For me, you're just my friends, and we talk, and I love both of you, and I wanted to have both of you on it because I have Dr. Nerenberg expressing his opinion from a Jewish point of view, and of course, I have Dr. Mo, who's hands-on in the Gaza Strip, knowing exactly what's happening from actually being there, expressing his point of view. So I said, why can't we have both my friends, both learned individuals, both doctors, come on and have a civil discussion, which is what I wish somebody would do in the Middle East, sit down and have a civil discussion and see why we can't just do like Mama Fletcher said and love everybody. Because I know that your religion teaches that, and I know that yours does also, that we must love each other. So,
all right. So, first up, As Pops was just saying, we have Dr. Arnold Nerenberg, a Jewish-American psychologist recognized for his work in trauma, morale reasoning, and conflict resolution. Dr. Nerenberg has dedicated much of his career to understanding how trauma shapes identity, decisions, and even cycles of violence. He comes to this conversation rooted in the Jewish historical experience and the values of justice and survival that informs many Jewish people's views in the conflict. Also joining us in-house is Dr. Mohammed Mustafa, a Palestinian physician. Dr. Mustafa has spent many years practicing medicine in Gaza, caring for families under siege, rebuilding what has been broken and preserving dignity amid devastations. I have the chance to, when CT sent me his Instagram, I got a chance to sit and watch the work that you were doing. And let me say this before we get started. I am blown away by you as just a human being. And I will say that the work you were doing is amazing. And it's sitting the last couple of days just watching what you're doing and trying to research what's going on over there. Like, we need more people like you, brother. I will say that. Like, we need more people like you, period, in the world. Not just over there, but in the world in general. So let me say thank you so much for the work that you're doing over there. It is not going unnoticed. And like I was literally in tears last night watching some of the stuff that you're doing over there. And I just wanted to tell you personally that I am blown away by the work you're doing. So thank you so much for what you're doing, brother.
Thank you, man. Honestly, I feel like sometimes like that kind of praise is it's too much for me. You know, I'm just a normal, regular dude just trying to make a difference in the world. And, you know, I hope, like CT was saying, you know, I hope God accepts what I was doing. You know, I'm doing this for God. I'm doing this for humanity. I'm trying to do something to make a positive change. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's all coming from a good place.
Yeah, I was getting a little choked up there thinking about last night. And my wife, Kim, she was just like, Michael, this can be a very powerful episode. And so for it to be a powerful episode for me and for the both of you, I feel like we have a few questions, but it's really hearing both sides of it, I think, is the most important part. So I feel like as far as just a few questions that I have, that I want us to kind of take a step back and allow this to be a conversation between the two gentlemen. So let's get into it. Before we do anything, I do want to ask both of you a question. And Dr. Mo, we can start with you. What inspired you to become a doctor?
So, you know, when I was growing up, my father was a doctor.
Okay.
And my dad grew up in Gaza. He grew up as a refugee. And, you know, it's quite interesting because, you know, those, the USA aid has been cut.
Yes.
Right? My dad actually, the USA aid flour bags, my dad used to wear them as his trousers. His mum used to cut holes in them and he used to wear them as trousers in Gaza. And, you know, he didn't own a pair of shoes till he was like 15 years old. And I remember the stories that my uncles used to tell me. They used to say that all of them would go out and play football and kick a ball around, which is soccer for you guys. Yeah. And, you know, my dad would buy candles. Yeah. And he would use those candles to study. He was that committed and that driven that he wanted to do something. And, you know, now my dad is the leading fertility specialist in the whole UK. And he did that coming from a refugee background. So I always looked at my father and I just saw, you know, where he came from and what he became. And it was medicine that did that. And I just wanted to be like my dad. You know, everyone wants to be like their dad. And I just wanted to be like my dad.
I didn't want to. I understand.
Yeah. So, you know, that's what inspired me to be a doctor. And, you know, like, medicine is one of those things. It's like a vocation. Like, I thought to myself, like, I want to make a change in this world. Would I, you know, growing up as a refugee, you know, growing up being displaced from my home, you know, I saw what it was like not belonging anywhere. I saw what it was like moving from place to place and nobody giving you even the dignity of respect or a place to stay. And I didn't want other people to feel like I felt. That's what drove me. Yeah. And I felt like medicine was the way to do that because medicine doesn't discriminate if you're black, white, gay, Muslim, Jewish. You know, if you've got a headache, it's the same treatment. You know what I mean? If you have a heart attack, it's the same treatment. It's the same CPR that I'll be doing to you that I'll be doing to somebody else. And that's what I felt was so powerful about medicine is this uniting factor in all of us, you know? And, you know, watching my father and the unity of what medicine does, that's why I wanted to be a doctor. And, you know, and alhamdulillah, I'm here today, you know?
So, Dr. Nerenberg, same question for you. I've heard multiple stories of you over my years of knowing CT. He speaks of you in such high regard. And so he talks about you a lot to the point where I feel like I kind of know you, even though I've never physically met you. So what made you want to be a doctor coming up?
You know, I never even heard of the field of psychology until I was about a senior in high school, and I saw this book on the shelf that said Psychology of Life by Ruth. And I knew right then
Arnie, can I interrupt just for a minute? I want you to tell, this is nothing to do with, tell them how old you are.
I'm 84. But that's my chronological age. I'm really 28. But my chronological age is 84. But I tell people, this is going to sound strange. You're not going to believe this. But yesterday I was 28. And I said I really was 28 yesterday. So this is my chronological age. And then my the age that I feel I'm at. So that's how that goes. And, you know, I would say in terms of strength training, and I had the privilege to know CT, to have its loving brotherhood. I didn't really reach my prime in strength until I was 65 years old when I took the title strongest drug-free man in the world from age and weight. So when people think you could achieve, you know, you decline with age. My best bench press when I was in my 20s was 255, and my best bench press at 65 was 365 drug-free. But yeah, getting back to the question, and I like to say this about weightlifting, by the way, since that's one of the unifying things. But I mean, Dr. Muhammad looks like just a beast, and I know T is. I mean, I know that. So and T was and still has a lot. But I look at Dr. Muhammad, I go, wow. I mean, it reminds me of Richard Schoenberg, you know, Big Daddy. I mean, back in the day, and he would bench press 600, you know, raw, no gear on at all.
Right.
And Dr. Muhammad looks like he could do 600, maybe more. He looks like that. So much respect for you, Dr. Muhammad, as a man of strength, as an athlete, as a man of courage. You're a humble man, but I have to say that you've been there. You've been knee deep in the blood. You grew up in that situation. You're helping the people. I would have to say that, in my opinion, makes you, in many ways, a greater man than myself. You're there. Now, I know you feel you're just doing your job, and I understand that. I understand your view of yourself. And I also understand the view that the good that we do, I tell people this, I say, I'm not really a good guy. The good that I do is aligning myself with the Word of God. And that's what I feel when you're talking, that you've aligned yourself with a very strong spiritual force. Now, so going back, I knew in that year, and I never heard of psychology, but back in the 50s, I'll tell you something strange about the 50s. And get this is going to blow your mind. Nobody had any problems. Now, you know how crazy that was? It was all suppressed. So naturally, you didn't hear about psychology because no one had any problems. It was all smiles and chit-chat about the car and your hairdo. It was nuts. So the 60s came, we exploded out, and I was a hippie in the 60s, just exploding out of the thing. And I didn't look like the other white boys there because you guys might think I'm a white guy, but no, the white people say, no, you're a Jew. You're not one of us. Okay. Took a while to figure out where I fit in. So go with that journey. And then I went through, so I knew I was going to have something to do with psychology, writing, and business, and which is my whole life unfolded along those lines. So then when I was 20 years old, I went through a severe depression. I mean, I could hardly speak. I was at the University of Buffalo at the time. I got exempted from the finals. They gave me whatever grades I had, except the psychology professor. He said, no, you got to take your finals. And somehow I still aced it, but I can't tell you how mentally impaired I was. Then I remember the moment I was going to play tennis with my friend Bob Schneider, and all of a sudden it lifted. Oh, wow. And I saw psychiatrists during that time. It was useless. They put me on Mellaril, a drug. It made me feel like a zombie, so I wasn't on that. So I came out of it. By the grace of God, I mean, I was in bad shape. And back then, you couldn't talk about it. So people don't realize the freedom that we have now is far beyond what you know. Not only in terms of politics, racism, and so forth, there's a lot of room to grow. The freedom that we have is today, we can have a problem. It's all right to have problems. You have Dr. Phil, self-help books. So We have that now, but we didn't have that then. So wanting to go into psychology was an unusual thing. So I said, I don't want to get depressed again, and I want to help other people with depression. And that's a very long, circuitous way of answering your question.
No problem, no problem. So let's jump right into it. I want to start off with the religious side of it, religion and identity. Dr. Ma, I'll start with you. How does your religious or cultural identity shape your perspective on the conflict that's going on in Gaza right now?
You know, a lot of people want to frame this as a Muslim Jewish thing.
Yes.
But, you know, Palestine, or Palestinians, they're Christians as well. You know, the third oldest church in the world is in Gaza. That was bombed by the Israelis, by the IDF. The Pope used to call them every single day. That's why the Pope used to call for a ceasefire. And I think what a lot of people sometimes forget is they think that Palestinians are just Muslims, and we're not. We're Christians, we're Muslims, we're Druze, and also there's Palestinian Jews as well. You know, the first leaders of of Israel, Ben Gurion and co, they had Palestinian passports. You know, so, and you know, before the foundation of Israel, which you know, Dr. Nerenberg knows, is, you know, he's older than the state of Israel. So, you know, there were Jews that used to live in that land before Israel existed. So they were Palestinian back then as well. So, you know, it's very misleading when people talk about religion in this conflict, because from an outside eye, it looks like it's Muslims and Jews fighting, but it's not.
And can I say something, interject something really quick? And this is why I feel like this conversation is so important, because when I was formatting this show, I just know what's out there. I haven't talked to an actual Jewish person, an actual person from Palestine. I haven't had those experiences. So I think these conversations are so important. So as you're talking, I'm like,
I have.
Well, you have, but I haven't. So as you're talking, I'm just like, it's so much, even though we may watch CNN or whatever, it's so much of this conflict that we don't know. And I sit here now, I'm just like, as much preparation as I thought I did, I clearly don't know a lot. So I'm happy that we're having this conversation. I just wanted to interject that, and I'll let you continue.
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, it's not to say that religion doesn't play a part in this, right? Because obviously, you know, you hear the far-right ministers in Israel, like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, saying that they want to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem and they want to rebuild the Third Temple. And the evangelical Christians here in America want that to happen so Jesus can return and the rapture can come, right? So there is a religious element to this. There's no point in denying that. But the actual foundation of this is not religious at all. This was about, in the 1940s, this was about one of the greatest crimes that happened, which was the Holocaust. And it was a European crime. It wasn't an Arab crime, it was a European crime. And the way that the Europeans dealt with that and the anti-Semitism that was ripe in Europe for centuries was, we want to give the Jewish people a homeland, and we're going to give them a homeland in a part of the world that they have historic ties to, which is Palestine. But they did that without the consent of the Palestinian people or the people living on that land at the time. And what that then meant was, it meant that in the 1940s, there was the ethnic cleansing of almost 1 million Palestinians from their land. And those 1 million Palestinians was called the Nakba. This happened in 1948. And what happened to those 1 million Palestinians was, we all had to move out of what is modern day Israel, most of us, as there's still some of them that stayed there, but most of us had our villages destroyed, were killed, and we had to move. And that's why in the Gaza Strip now, 70% of the people in Gaza are refugees from what is Israel. They come from what is now modern day Israel, but they're refugees in Gaza. So that's what this is about in essence. It's about the crimes of one nation being repaid by another group of nation, while the nation that had the crime inflicted on them is now committing a crime on this population. And it is a story from my point of view as a Palestinian. You know, you look at it and you go, this is settler colonialism. This is a group of people that were Europeans that came over and colonized the land and took over the land and pushed out the people that were living there. And this is not to say that Jewish people don't have a claim to the land. They do. right? But so do Muslims and so do Christians. This is the holy site for all three of those Abrahamic faiths. But before the state of Israel, Muslims, Jews, and Christians were living there in peace. And it's the formation of Israel that this political movement, right? Because Zionism is this political ideology and it's a political movement. This political ideology is now what's festering. And you see that now. You see the politics of Zionism in American politics with AIPAC and the Israeli lobby. Pretty much everybody in Congress, apart from 10, take money from AIPAC,
yep.
right? So when people talk about, and this is why I think it's really important to make a distinction between Zionism and between Judaism, because Judaism is a religion that's been there for thousands of years, right? It's one of the Abrahamic religions. But Zionism is a political ideology that was founded over 100 years ago, right? About, because the Zionists didn't pick Palestine as their first choice to have home for Jewish people. It was Argentina they were thinking about moving Jewish people to Uganda, to even the Northern Territory in Australia. So this is what I mean. So it never was about Palestine. It was about giving the Jewish people a homeland. And that in itself, that's what I mean about Zionism. The birth of Zionism was anti-Semitic in itself. It was these group of, Christians in Europe saying, we don't want the Jewish people here. So we want to give them a homeland somewhere far away so they can move out and leave. And that was after they tried to kill them all in the Holocaust. Again, a European crime being committed by Europeans and then making the global South pay for that crime by picking and choosing who from the global South that we're going to give their home to. And it just so happened that the easiest one to kind of get a rally of support around was Palestine because of the historical links of Palestine to the Jewish people. And, that's in a nutshell, that's how this whole conflict had started. And it was the crime of the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from their homes that started this. And it's not to say that Palestinian people have been the perfect victims, because we haven't, right? But also as well, one thing, and this is a saying I think I've heard, talk about with you, I think before, you can't compare the violence of the slave to the slave master, right? You can't compare that. The violence that it takes to shackle somebody, right, is more than the violence of someone trying to remove those shackles or that boot on the neck. And that's what people need to remember when they talk about the Palestine-Israeli conflict.
So in that analogy, the Palestinians are of course the slaves.
Yep.
And the Israelis are the slave masters. So just to make it clear. I think it's time to let, because
I was going to ask him the same question.
I've heard, so you see, okay, this is what I hear from Dr. Mo, and then I hear your opinion also. And like I said, I love both of you. I'm friends with both of you. So it's your turn.
Same question to you, Dr. Nerenberg.
Well, first let me say that the slaughter of innocents has taken place of the Gaza children and the people of the Palestinian people is an abomination. It's a horrible thing to be happening, just horrible. No question around it. I mean, those are human beings, they're innocent. And it's a terrible, terrible tragedy.
Do you agree with Dr. Mo as to the initiator or the starter or where this whole conflict started at? Do you agree with that?
Okay. Well, here's what happened. So some people say, well, 1948 began with, firstly, the state was Israel. We were conquered by the Babylonians and dispersed as slaves. We were conquered by the Romans. We were conquered by the Arabs. Before Islam, this was all that had taken place. So then the Romans, to further humiliate the Jews, changed it from Israel, you had the tribe of Judah, to Palestine. So it came from really the Roman conquerors changed the name. But it was Israel, and then it was called the Palestinians. First, let me say a little perspective, because there is as Dr. Muhammad so well said, I mean, there's a political dimension and there is a religious undertone to it as well. First, let me say that I'm married into a Muslim family. My wife is Persian, Muslim background. My mother-in-law was a devout Muslim, praying 5 times a day. I personally read the Quran twice, cover to cover, and my life was tremendously impacted. I would say it changed my life in understanding. It inspired me in a deeper understanding of justice through the guidance and warnings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And I'm pretty familiar with the 5 pillars of Islam. I'm familiar with some of the hadiths because I'm Baha'i. And I'm a follower of Baha'u'llah, teachings of Baha'u'llah. So we have a deep love of Islam and of the Muslim people because my religious and spiritual identity is as a follower of Baha'u'llah. I need to understand where I'm coming from as I look at this. So I look at it that way. I look at the Quran, I look at Torah. So from a Baha'i perspective, the Quran is an improvement over Torah. Each one that came, the New Testament was an improvement over Torah. Then Quran came, was an improvement because God, through a Baha'i perspective, kept updating the holy book for the changing times. So that's why we're encouraged as Baha'is to mix with love and fellowship with the people of all religions. So I have that deep love of Islam. Now, as a Baha'i, in terms of the Shiite Muslims, in Iran, they killed tens of thousands of us, Baha'is. If about the Jews, Baha'is just slaughtered us in very brutal manners. Now, you have mullahs, most mullahs are beautiful, great people, but then you have some really fanatical, brutal, sadistic people that get in power. And I mean, they didn't just kill us, they slaughtered us, took us apart piece by piece. So I've seen that happen. Now, did we live in peace in that area? Yeah, there was a lot of people knowing each other, doing some business together. And by the way, Palestinians and Israelis, I'll tell you who could get along. Not the religious leaders, not the politicians, the thieves. The Jewish thief would rob a Mercedes from another Jew, and then the Palestinian thief with his partner would sell it to an Arab nation, and they did business together. They did business together in that fashion. The thieves, they said, I don't necessarily like you, your race, or anything else, but we're do business. That was the equalizer, was money. The thieves worked things out. Perhaps even the athletes could have done it, but the politicians, religious leaders, different story. So now, the violence, you had the Mizrahi Jews who were there that had been there for thousands of years, who were never left. Most Jews were taken out as slaves. They had the Mizrahi Jews. Then the Ashkenazi Jews who were in diaspora went out in Europe because we were not because we wanted to be in Europe, it's we were carried off as slaves, which was it wasn't unusual. This is not a complaint. It's not a victim story. It's just what happened back in the day. So we were slaves, got dispersed. But every year at our Passover service, we would say next year in Jerusalem. And we did that for thousands of years. And next year, we always planned on going back. So then, always want to go back to Jerusalem. Maybe some of the Zionists talk about Argentina, Uganda, whatever. But the Jewish mind is always Jerusalem, Israel. That's in terms of understanding the Jewish narrative of this. Now, I can respect, I've talked to Palestinian, our patients that are Palestinian. I don't tell them my point of view, I listen to them. And the narrative goes, the Jews stole our land, our dignity, and our freedom. And now they're killing our children. That's the narrative. And it's, I'm not saying it's a false narrative. I'm just saying that's the whole narrative. And as Dr. Muhammad so well said, they're not a perfect victim. But nonetheless, when I talk to Palestinians, my Palestinian brothers, we're cousins. We're all descendants of Abraham. They came through Ishmael. We came through Isaac. And as Baha'is, we came through the wife Keturah. So there was Hagar. Our Muslim brothers came from there. We came, the Jews from Sarah. And Baha'u'llah came from a lineage from Keturah, one of his other wives, from Muhammad. So we have the same ancestor, the same father. Now, what people don't understand is what a great thing Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, brought to the area, because the Arabs would bury their daughters alive. He forbid it. What a huge improvement. He created an Islamic civilization and was amazing. It culminated in Spain with its tolerance and poetry and investigation and medicine. Unbelievable. Now, that happened. Now, at the same time, and Islam made some of the greatest contributions to the world. In fact, the Renaissance in Europe was because of the Islamic influence. Europe was in the Dark Ages. Islam elevated it. So we have to have that respect for the contribution of our Muslim brothers and for the power of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. We have to have that respect. Without that respect, there's no conversation. Now, I went to Israel in 1976 on Baha'i pilgrimage. There was a restaurant, Escondido, owned by a Palestinian man. We became friends. I said, well, you know, there's so many problems in Israel at this time. He says, yeah, but we're cousins, he said. So when he knew I was going to go to Israel on Pak, because the Baha'i shrines we have on Mount Carmel. That's where Baha'u'llah was spent many years in prison in Akka. So, and the Bab is buried there, and Abdul Baha. So we have this history, and when Baha'u'llah came, it was to unify humankind. So the oneness of humankind cannot be denied. There's no difference between my beautiful Palestinian brothers like Dr. Mohammed and the others, Jewish, all of that. We're heading towards the oneness of humankind. Now, historically, we can either get together through the teachings of God, or we can kill each other first. Historically, we've all slaughtered each other first, and then, like Vietnam, we slaughtered each other. Now we go there for vacations. They have a lot of Vietnamese here. They're great businessmen, patriotic Americans. And now with this thing with Islam that's going on in the Middle East. I mean, when I was growing up, nobody knew anything about Islam. They didn't know the Quran, Ramadan. They didn't know anything. I mean, even in the auditoriums, they would pray in the name of Jesus Christ, which as Jews at that time, I mean, it was a problem. As a Baha'i, it wouldn't be a problem, but as a Jew. So you had that. So typically, we historically kill each other first. Then we intermarry. We've got Mohammeds and Husseins and Alis running around our streets here. People are knowing these names. You have on the calendar, Ramadan. You know, Ayin, you have different things on the calendar. That wasn't on the calendar. You have Rosh Hashanah on the calendar. They didn't have that. So there's a mixing happening, and we will eventually achieve the unity of humankind. We can do it the hard way or the easy way of following God's teachings. So I want to be able to put in a broader perspective of what's happening. In terms of, you know, the scene that happened there, there's the narrative, which Dr. Muhammad so eloquently described. You know, there was an ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians that were there, which is unjust and cruel, and basically survivors of a genocide perpetuating this violence. That's the narrative, and I understand that narrative. The other narrative is, in 1948, when Israel was formed, you can say it wasn't fair, it wasn't just, but it was formed in the Balfour Declaration. And a lot of the land at that point was bought up by Jews. So it wasn't all Arab or Palestinian owning it. A lot of Jews bought up the land. Now, so Israel was attacked by Syria, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, all the armies, and America was not backing Israel at the time. America wasn't really for us, really. There was a lot of anti-Semitism that was in America. Israel got the ammunition and weapons from Czechoslovakia, and they defeated the Arab invasion. But here's this other narrative. I'm just going to present it as a narrative, so you can see this other narrative, which is that the invading Arabs said to the Arabs that were living here, to the Palestinians, leave the land, go aside, and we're going to wipe out the Jews, and then you come back, get your land plus more land. Now, so they left with the idea they're going to come back in. Now, I'm sure some of them were unjustly pushed out, no question about it, in my mind. But that's the other side of the narrative, that I'm sure there were some people that were truly a victim, and some went voluntarily while the Jews are going to be wiped out. We'll get the booty, the loot after our Arab and Muslim brothers to take care of the job. Well, that took place. I mean, that's the other half. So the two narratives, I'm not going to tell you this is false narrative, this is the true narrative. I think the best I can do to not be divisive, because I don't want to be divisive, say, here's the two narratives. Now, to just take it a step further. In 1929, there was a slaughter of a whole village by Muslims, a Jewish village, slaughtered. And there are many instances of attacks on Jews in that area. As a matter of fact, in World War II, the head mufti amongst the Palestinians was an ally of Hitler. He went there to help solve the Jewish problem, which was to exterminate us. So that issue was the Christians against us, yeah. We had some definite other people against us as well. Again, I'm not claiming anybody to be sorry for us or anything. I'm just saying that's a fact that happened. Now, so the violence didn't start in 1948 with this. Now, I had a relative, his name was Isaiah Horowitz, a very famous Jewish scholar known as a Shloch HaKadosh. He was born in Poland in 1550. He went to Israel, he was the head rabbi. The head mufti, and this was a tradition here, he kidnapped him, held him for ransom, and the Jewish community got the money to free him, and he left and never came back. And that was a way of raising money back then. You kidnapped a Jew. Yeah. Now, keep in mind, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, respected the Jewish, respected the Christian, said they're people of the book. But you get some of these mullahs, most of the mullahs are great. I heard a sermon from a mullah on one of the surahs. It was beautiful. I mean, I was inspired. Then he ended it with this. He quoted a hadith, which I'm sure was not authentic. It says, Prophet Muhammad said, peace be upon him, if a Jew is in front of you, kill him. If a Jew stands behind you, slit his throat. I was shocked. But this guy was an eloquent speaker. So I know how some of these mullahs can whip people up. You've got that dynamic going on. Now, the suffering of Dr. Muhammad and the people of the Palestinian people, it's tragic. There's just no way about it. I mean, he was a refugee, and I would have to say, I believe he's a greater man than me. I mean, he went there. He could have been killed. He serviced the people. He was knee deep in tragedy. He took care. Nothing but respect. Nothing but respect. Now, on 10/7, when that happened, the slaughter of 1,400 Israelis, raped, pillaged, mutilated, I wept. I did not weep for the Israelis. You might think I did as a Jewish heritage. No. I wept for the Palestinians. I knew this was coming. What's going on now, this horrible, horrible slaughter, I knew this was coming. So I have to ask you, do you think Hamas did not know? Now, on the Israeli side, they built bomb shelters to protect Jews from bombs because Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis sending rockets in, tens of thousands of rockets over the years. Did they build, to my knowledge, I don't know of any bomb shelters built.
Dr. Nerenberg,
yeah.
But give me a second. We only got an hour and we're about 40 minutes in already.
I go on too long. I
want to try to get into a few more of these questions. So I wanted to get each of your perspective on this, but we're talking about religion. So my next question to both of you is, and let's just going forward, let's try to keep the answers about 2 minutes or so we can try to get through some of this.
I'm going to try.
So going forward, so we got your different perspective. So Dr. Ma, I'll start with you. Is religion more of a barrier to peace, or could it be part of the solution?
Well, I think, religion has become really tainted here, like with the evangelical Christians believing in, this Jewish homeland and the expulsion of the Muslim population to bring all the Jews here so the rapture can come and the rebuilding of the temple. Yes. That is a major barrier, especially within the Republican Party here. At the end of the day, Muslims and Jews, they're cousins. And, even when, Dr. Nerenberg was talking about riots that broke out in the 1920s and the 1930s, that was under British rule because Palestine was occupied by the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire. Okay. And after the First World War, the Ottoman Empire was defeated. The Lawrence of Arabia story.
Yep.
And what happened was the British used the Arabs to revolt against the Ottoman rulers. And they used the Arabs in what is now modern-day Palestine to revolt against the Ottomans. And this is why we've got the British Mandate for Palestine, because basically what they said is if you revolt and against the Ottomans and help us, we'll give you your home,
Land.
we'll give you your land back,
Yeah.
we'll let you govern it. So the Palestinians had lived there, and like I say, Ben Gurion, the leaders, the first Israeli leaders, were Palestinian. They had Palestinian passports. So this was a area, but it was controlled by the Ottomans, and then it was the British Mandate for Palestine. And what the British did was the British were very good at instigating secular violence between the Jews and the Muslims there at the time, because they did the same thing in India, with the Muslims and the Hindus there. And that's why you had the partition of Pakistan and India. And now you've got two nuclear powers who almost went to war just a few weeks ago, aiming bombs at each other. So this isn't, what I'm saying isn't like a conspiracy. This is just what the British used to always do. And when we were talking about, Jewish people buying land there, what would happen is the idea of buying the land was they would buy the land, and it would kind of be like, yeah, we're going to buy the farmland there, but you can all live here and we'll buy the land. But what would happen is they'd buy the land and then they would evict them. And that would cause more tensions. And that was before, obviously, then the Holocaust then happened. This was in the 1930s as more and more land was being bought up by Jewish people coming and living there. But then what happened is after the Second World War and the Holocaust, you had an influx of Jewish people coming to Palestine. And then you had the UN partition it. And what they did was they divided Palestine, 54% going to the Jewish people and 46% going to the Arabs, the Palestinians. However, at the time, it was 30% of the population was Jewish and 60%, 70% were Arabs. So obviously they never accepted this, because they said, you said to us, if we revolted against the Ottomans, that we would have our home back. But now you're saying that we have to petition it and we have to give the majority of our home to this minority group of people who are all the way coming from Europe. And they're coming from Europe because you committed a Holocaust and a genocide on them. So obviously the Arabs at the time didn't agree to it. But, I always think about this, because if you want to go back and you want to talk about biblical stuff, think about the story of Solomon, when two women came to Solomon, right?
Mhm.
And they had a baby and they were both arguing about the baby,
Absolutely.
right? And what did they say?
Just split them.
Yeah, they said, each one of them was saying, this is my baby,
Yeah,
this is my baby. So what did Solomon say? He said, all right, let's split the baby in half, and you keep a half and you keep a half. And then one of the mothers, the mother of the child, didn't want this to happen to her child. So she just said, it's not my baby. It was her baby, but she didn't want the baby to die.
Yeah.
So she said, it's not my baby. And Prophet Solomon then was like, that's the mother, because the mother would never allow her child to be split in two. And this is very much the story of Palestinians. Of course, we didn't accept that our land be divided, because it was our land, it was our home. Now, we can talk about Jewish people having a historic role in this land, a historic right to this land, but that is not the only historic right to this land, because when the Jews came, when they were freed by Moses, and they came there, the Canaanites were there. Who are the Canaanites today? And who's to say that, if you were to look at my DNA, that my family ancestry wasn't Jewish before the Muslims came and we converted to Islam? Do you know what I mean? So this is the thing. So, the Jewish story of Jerusalem and the Holy Land is one story, but there's the Christian story of Christians and their holy sites, and where Jesus, baptized people, and where he was crucified. They have a claim to the land as well. But so do Muslims. Muslims have a claim to the land, and so do the Palestinians. They have a claim to the land. And that's what was missing in this, because what Zionism is, it's about the supremacy of one religious and ethnic group over another. And, Israel is not just about the supremacy of just Jewish people. It's a certain type of Jewish person, because, up until 2011, Ethiopian Jews were put on contraception without them knowing, Ethiopian women, because they didn't want black Jews. So this is what I mean about this being a colonialist entity, Zionism, and a European white settler colonial entity, because it wasn't just about Jewish supremacy. It was a certain type of Jewish supremacy, a certain type. And that was that's the bit where you really have to take a step back and look at this and see this for what it is. This is an apartheid regime. You don't have the same rights as another group of people, just solely based on your religion and your skin color. Because even as a black Jew, you're seen as much less than a white Jew. And not even just that as well. Arab Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, even Arab Jews are, because there's Arabic Jews, there's Arabic ethnic origin Jews, even they are seen as less as well. And there is it's like when in Miami, I think there was like this American Jewish guy shot at 2 Israelis. Do you remember this? This was only a few months ago.
Okay.
So this man shot at these two guys because he thought they were Arabs. So this was a Jewish American shooting at 2 guys that he thought were Arabs. It turned out that they were Arab Jews. They were Israeli Arab Jews. And these Israeli Arab Jews, when they were in hospital, one of them put up on his social media, he said, "We just were in an anti-Semitic attack, but we survived. Death to the Arabs." But I'm sat there and I'm looking at myself and going, but you're an Arab. You're Jewish, but you're an Arab.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean about like the level of hatred that is seeped into that society. Whereas even though this guy was shot at by another Jewish person, he was shot at for the fact that he looked Arab.
Right.
And he was saying death to Arabs, even though he isn't Arab. Right? So this, like I say, this isn't just, and this is why you're seeing the vengeance and the vendetta of what's happening in Gaza.
Yeah.
You know, when you see children being shot in the head, like I've seen children being shot in the head, when you see 1 million children being starved to death, when you're watching this, you have to say something. Who could do something like this? And it's because there's been this level of hatred that has brewed in that society for decades and decades and decades, because you don't go from 0 to genocide. You don't go from one terrorist attack, right, on October the 7th, to then committing a genocide. To commit a genocide takes decades, sometimes centuries, to get to that stage, like what happened to Jewish people in Europe. You know, that didn't happen overnight. Europe was a deeply anti-Semitic place for a very, very long time. And, you know, there was many pogroms that had happened. There were many warnings that this was coming.
And then Hitler
fulfilled
it.
And Hitler it was the end stage of these centuries of anti-Semitism in Europe. And this is what we're seeing right now in Gaza. We're seeing, because of decades of anti-Arab hatred, anti-Muslim hatred. And then you speed that up, because what after happened at 9/11 and things like that, the Islamophobia in America and in places like that just increased. And it's got to a stage where, you know, you could go to Iraq in an illegal war that we all now agree that was no weapons of mass destruction. It was a war for oil. And you could kill 1 million Arab babies, 1 million Muslim Arab babies for oil. And nobody gets prosecuted. Nobody gets called a Stalin or a Hitler, right? Because why? Because they killed Arabs. And when we talk about the Holocaust, we always think about the Jewish Holocaust. Well, what about the Black Holocaust? What about the 400 years of slavery, of black people being bought on ships and dying, to the point of which that Holocaust, the Black Holocaust, changed the physical composition of black people? Like when you've got African Americans here, why are they so much better at sport than African people per se? Because these people for generations have been bred. They've been bred. Why is it that in medicine, and I'm sure Dr. Nerenberg knows this, why is it in medicine that if a black person came with high blood pressure, or a white person came with high blood pressure, it's a different type of drug that I give to the black person compared to the white person? Do you know why? Because the people that survived on those slave ships, right, naturally had a higher level of salt in their body, so their blood pressure would stay up because of the thirst. You needed people that had slightly higher blood pressure because they were so dehydrated because of the lack of water given to them on their journey over from Africa to America. That's why the people that survived naturally had higher salt levels. So that's why black people now, here, African Americans here, naturally are more likely to have things like obesity and diabetes and high blood pressure. That's because of what happened in the Black Holocaust. But
can I say this? You called it a Black Holocaust.
Yeah.
And as a black man,
Yeah.
I'm 47 years old.
Yeah.
You were the first person I ever heard call it a Black Holocaust.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was, but people do not look at it like that.
No, they don't. Because if they did, they would have to confront the reality of what happened, of slavery.
Dr. Nerenberg, the next question is for you. Do you feel like we will see peace in our lifetime when it comes to this war? Or do you think this is just going to be something that is going to continue on and on for a long period of time? Do you think we will see peace in the Middle East in our lifetime?
You know, when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was passing away, there was already a schism in amongst the Muslim brothers. You had the Shiites and the Sunnis. One went through Ali, one went through Abu Bakr. And the Sunnis killed all the imams from Ali to his son Hussein, and just cut his head off, and this was brutal killings. And in fact, the Shiites still beat themselves in memory of the killing there. So the killing between Shiite and Sunni has been going on for well over 1,000 years. That's been happening. And if you look at the killing, say when Assad was president in Syria, I mean, he killed about 600,000 people, about 2 million refugees came out of that. So you had these things going on a long time. I don't think in our lifetime, but I think there's some things that could help. I actually, and I'm not saying anybody's going to do what I'm going to suggest, I think it'd be very good for all the Jews, particularly in Israel, to study Quran, to show respect for the holy book. Can't go wrong with that, but show some respect. I think then the Muslim over there, and the Muslim Brotherhood, who's behind a lot of it from Egypt, they're involved a lot with these things going on, to study Torah, to understand the Jewish experience historically and the connection to the land of Israel. So that would be a step in terms of that. At this point, I think it would be helpful if the nations recognize the right of Israel to exist as a Jewish nation. And by the way, 25% of the people are Muslim, and they serve in the Knesset. They hold high positions. They serve in the IDF and the military. They go to college. They're well educated. And in terms of our black brothers who are Jews from Ethiopia, they were being persecuted in Ethiopia, and Israel airlifted them out of there, brought them to Israel because they're our brothers. Now, I will say this.
I've heard what you said. I heard what he said about that. I knew that
Yeah.
was a difference.
Now, I will say this. Let me say this. I had a good friend, Hilmi Abraham, who's a professor at Whittier College. I said, you know, a lot of European Jews are kind of abrasive, we're kind of obnoxious in some ways. And he says, yeah, it's not because you guys are Jewish, it's because Eastern Europeans are abrasive. I said, well, I know our Muslim brothers, the Arabs, are hospitable. I mean, when I went to Israel, that Palestinian restaurateur had it. He says, bring this candy to my brother in Israel. And so I brought the candy to his brother in Israel, and he had us over for dinner. It was very hospitable. And my cousin Arnie, who was Orthodox Jewish, I mean, he came to see us, but didn't take us to his home. So, I do think that there's that cultural clash. And I do think that the Israelis in the early days were very racist in a lot of ways. Now, not where they hang and kill people, but just racist. For example, when people came from Germany, the survivors of the Holocaust, they were despised by the other Jews because there were sheep. They said, when you're sheep, you walked into the gas chambers and the concentration camps, and they were despised for that. So you have...
So Dr. Nerenberg, see, that's an interesting point that you were saying about, the Holocaust survivors, because Israel was formed on the basis of, we don't want this to happen again to Jewish people, the Holocaust, so we're going to give them a state so they can protect themselves, that they no longer have to live in these predominantly Christian countries and are at the beck of these leaders, right? Mm-hmm. But when the Israeli state was formed, like you said, Holocaust survivors, people who survived this atrocity, they were deemed as troublesome to Israeli society. They weren't liked by Israeli society because they viewed them as weak. They said, you didn't fight strong enough, you didn't fight hard enough. And this is what I mean about the identity of Israel, right? The idea of it, a Jewish state for a people that don't have a state, that they can be safe and be protected in. Yet the people that need the most protection, the Holocaust survivors, the people that have gone through this, they are despised there. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean when we talk about Israel as what it is. For me, and you look at like the protests that are going on right now in Israel, right? 1 million people are out there protesting to stop the war.
Mm-hmm.
They're not protesting to stop the war. Most of them are not there protesting to stop the war because of Palestinian suffering. They're there to stop the war because of the hostages. They want to get the hostages out, right? A lot of them are indifferent to the suffering of the people going on in Gaza, right? But they're there because they want the hostages out. And Netanyahu is refusing to get the hostages out. And the hostages' families themselves are saying that we've been abandoned by our own government, because it is not about the safety of Jewish people, Israel. It's not, right? Because if it was, they would have made a deal to get the hostages out, right? And save those people that are suffering in there. But they didn't, because for them, what's more important than the hostages' lives is the entity and the state of Israel. And that's what I mean about, like, even what it says on the tin that it is about protecting Jewish people, it's done the opposite. Israel has inflamed anti-Semitism all around the world, right? It's inflamed anti-Semitic tropes all around the world. And the way that it's done that is, Netanyahu will come over here and he'll talk about how the Jews here in America need to be supporting Israel more.
Mm-hmm.
And it fits into this trope that Jewish people have a dual loyalty. Their loyalty first is to Jews first before it is to the society that they live in. When he talks about, saying that you're anti-Semitic for calling a ceasefire, for wanting to have a ceasefire, or that those people marching on the streets are anti-Semitic, but those people marching on the streets aren't Arabs, they aren't Muslims, they're the LGBT community, the Black Lives Matter community, they're the students. And what they're doing is they're conflating the two things. They're saying, if you want to stop the killing of women and children in Gaza, you're anti-Semitic. And what it's saying that's Judaism right there. That's Judaism is the killing and the destruction of Gaza. That's Judaism. And if you're against it, you're against Jewish people. Mm-hmm. And this is what I mean by it's now making people go, well, if that is Judaism, then I don't like it. And it's inflaming anti-Semitism. And that's why Israel, everything that it says that it was to protect Jewish people. It was to stop anti-Semitism. It's done the exact opposite. It's willing to sacrifice Jewish lives in an endless war, right? It's willing to sacrifice the safety of Jews all around the world in order for this state to survive. And when you ask the question about, are we going to see peace in the Middle East? Look, I think we can see peace in the Middle East. And the reason why I believe we can see peace in the Middle East is because of one simple thing, which is the fact that once you commit a genocide, that's the end stage, right? That's it. That means that you've lost control. Once you commit a genocide, that's the final solution. Now, what worries me about what's going on in Gaza when I was there is that, are they going to be successful in this? Is they going to kill everybody and ethnically cleanse them, right? But if they don't, then the whole world has woken up to what's going on in Gaza. Israel has lost the support of pretty much the democratic voting bloc here. And now you're seeing within the right wing here, you're seeing a lot of right wingers talking about saying, hang on a sec, why are we saying America first when we do what Israel wants, when we're Israel first? When, you can, if you wanted to boycott American products in your business, and then a hurricane hit, the federal government will still bail out that business. But if you boycott Israeli products in about 30 states, the federal government won't help you because you boycotted a foreign nation. People are beginning to ask that on the right wing and go, are we really America first when we have these policies in place for Israel? And this is what I mean about, like, because the support is being lost for Israel in this country, what's happening in this country is there's becoming more and more draconian laws. You're watching Donald Trump kidnap students off the streets for writing an op-ed about Palestine. You're watching universities have their entire funding pulled, right, because of college campus protests, right? We saw this in the Vietnam War, but not to this extent. But because it's getting more and more draconian, the laws against the pro-Palestine movement and, the assaults and people losing their jobs and you're watching like a Cory Bush, for example, or members of Congress who speak out against Israel. You're watching AIPAC coming in and spending $6 million, $20 million in a primary to unseat one person who dares speak out. And people are beginning to watch this and they're beginning to say, not in our name, no more. And that's why I feel like this is going to change. And Israel has to adapt to this new reality. And the new reality is that we can no longer have a supremacist state. It is now going to have to be a state where everybody is equal, because the world no longer will tolerate this. Yeah. And that's what we're seeing here in America. And look, that might not happen in the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, but that is going to eventually happen, because what we're seeing now is a generational divide. The majority of even young Jews in this country do not support what Israel is doing and do not support Israel as what it stands for, because everything that it said that it stands for, the protection of Jewish people, the stopping of anti-Semitism, what we're watching is it's actually doing the exact opposite. It's making Jews less safe in Israel and around the world, and it's fanning the flames of anti-Semitism, because Israel historically has benefited from anti-Semitism, because it says, well, this is why we need more weapons and more guns, and this is why we need to control these 5 million people, and this is why we need to kill these and starve these million children. Because of anti-Semitism, we need to kill them all. And that's the heart and the crux of this. And, you know, this is not me talking in any kind of way, because look, at the end of the day, Muslims and Arabs and Jews are cousins, right? And at the end of the day, right, even as a Palestinian, I understand that Jewish people have a claim to that land like I do, but they do not have the only claim to that land, and they don't have a bigger claim than I do for that land.
Pops, I want to get you involved. Yeah, I was just about to say, I want you to jump in here.
Yeah, I have a question before we, just one last question. You're Baha'i.
Correct.
Muslim. Okay, I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Mo, do you believe that it is possible to make it into the kingdom of heaven and have hate in your heart for your cousin that is down here on earth? Do you believe it's possible to make it into the kingdom of heaven and have hate in your heart for your cousin, actually anybody, but for your cousin down here on earth?
Well, you know, I totally, you know, my love and respect for Mother Fletcher. Everything she said was, what she taught you was amazing. And I see that in you. I see it in there, and I had the privilege of talking with her a number of times on the phone. And she was amazing, and you can't disagree with what she has said. Certainly, we need to bring love into this. We need to bring justice into it. So as a Baha'i, we say that I taught that which will unify humanity is justice. We need to love each other as individuals, but we need to bring that justice over there. And I should have just add to that, you know, people want that ceasefire to stop the killing, no question about it. The other narrative is Hamas surrendered, give up the hostages, and it ends. So that's the other narrative on that. Now, what I tried to do my best, I don't totally succeed, is to give both narratives. Most Palestinians I talk to pretty much give a total, more of a victim, one-sided narrative, and can't really expand to seeing the other narrative. For the most part, although Dr. Muhammad touched on some of that, which I have so much respect for him, but for the most part, not able to do that. Again, I could succeed. I can get even better at it than I am to be able to see both narratives. And but in terms of love, I think we need justice and institutions of justice, real justice, to bring that unity. And as individuals to love one another, but we need an international tribunal of justice that has a military of real might. And Baha'u'llah talked about these institutions of justice, and they will destroy any government that violated another nation or violated its own people. We could argue about which government will be destroyed there. The Palestinian Arab, maybe the Israeli government should be destroyed. Say, well, the Hamas and the PLO should be destroyed, whatever. But the institution needs to be there of people who will rule with fairness, turning to God for guidance, and having love and unity between themselves in consultation, and establishing, and then the nations would all arise together to suppress that. Now, the
Dr. Nerenberg, you have not answered my question.
I would say that if people had that love in their heart, it would take care of it. Can they go to heaven without that love in their heart? I would say, you know, if they don't have a love for everybody the way Mama Fletcher did, it's better if they did. If they have love for most of the people and not some of the people, I think different degrees of it. If you love everybody, that's ideal. That's the best. I mean, truly the best. Loving your enemies, No question about it. And I agree with Mama Fletcher. That is the best in terms of our spiritual development. Absolutely. Then the different degrees of how much of humanity do you love? If you just love your own kind, or you love many of the groups, it's another story. So I would say the degrees. Now, from a Baha'i perspective, we're all going to move towards God in the next life, as opposed to a dichotomy. But the only ones that won't move towards God in the next life are those who hate the light itself. So if they hate God himself, then they stay in the darkness, not because God's punishing them, it's just that they're not attracted to that light. Now, that's the Baha'i perspective.
Okay, so we'll ask Dr. Mo the same question.
Yes.
Well, look, hate the sin, not the sinner.
That's what it says.
It's not for me to judge somebody. It's not for me to know what's in this person's heart. In Islam, like we always say, if you were to see somebody, with alcohol, you could smell alcohol on them. It's forbidden to drink in Islam, right? You should assume that someone threw the alcohol on him. You should assume that maybe he was forced to drink it, but you should never assume that he was the one that did it. And what that idea behind that is that you're going to show people grace. We're told all the time to show people grace, but why we're told this? Because we want God to show us grace.
Yes.
So in order to get grace, we have to show grace. And therefore, having this hate in your heart, for something that someone has done wrong to you, you're not a perfect person. There's going to be a lot of sins that you're going to carry when you meet God, And if you're able to let go of other people's sins and you're able to forgive, because that's what ultimately when we say, if you hate someone, you're not forgiving them. If you're able to forgive, God will forgive you. And, you won't be able to get into heaven if you're carrying all that hate and that lack of forgiveness, because ultimately you want the grace of God. And in order to get that, you have to show the grace to other people.
So before we get out of here, we only got a couple of minutes left. Dr. Mo, like I said at the beginning of this show, as I was researching you and watching all the videos you're putting out there, you are over there on the ground doing the work.
Yeah.
In just a few minutes, explain to me, what is that like for you to be there, to see all of these children that are being starved and dying? Like I said, I'm on the outside looking in, and I'm watching your videos last night, and I'm in tears. I'm like, how can this go on?
I think we said part 2.
Yes.
So
I just need to know from your perspective. You're there, you're doing the work, you're helping as many people as you can. You told a story where the lady was crawling and grabbed your leg, and you were trying to help another guy. And I'm watching this video, and I'm sitting on the edge of my bed, and I'm in tears, and I'm just like, how has what's going on over there, just from your perspective of trying to help people, how has that affected you as a person? And I ask that because I know how it affects, and I'm not there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. That story of that woman.
Mm-hmm.
It was, we had a mass casualty event, and we had all these bodies coming in, and there were so many bodies that there just wasn't enough room, and there wasn't enough beds to see everybody. So, I picked up this man and I put him on the bed, and I had my pocket ultrasound. I scanned his chest, and filled with blood, and he was struggling to breathe. So I know at that stage we need to get a chest tube in him. Mm-hmm. And to do that, you literally have to stab him in the chest, cut a hole, and to reinflate the lungs. And as I'm doing this to this guy, and I'm doing this without analgesia, right?
Jeez.
So I'm stabbing this guy in the chest. And as I'm doing that, this arm from underneath the bed, because there was just that many bodies, holds onto my leg. I can feel the squeeze. And I look down and I see this woman, and she's saying, Saidni, she's saying, help me. And, she's been brought in a blanket, and they've just dropped her there, and they're bringing in the other bodies. And I remember thinking to myself, right, I'm going to help her.
Yes.
But I need to help this man first, because he can't breathe. And as I'm putting the chest tube in and I'm securing it, I can still feel her holding onto my ankle. And when I finished securing the tube, I look down, and she's still holding my ankle, but she died. And I remember thinking to myself, I let her down. That's someone's mother, it's someone's sister, it's someone's daughter. She asked me for help. And I made the decision to help somebody else and not her. And look, a lot of people keep saying to me, it's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Yes.
You were doing what you can. It was a difficult situation. But
You still see her face.
every day I see her face. And every day I just think, like, I think about the kids that she could have had, you know, of the families that will never exist because she died. And, you know, that was part of the reason why I had to speak out about what was going on. We had to do something about this because you can't continue. This cycle of violence can't continue. We can't have 1 million children being starved to death. Why are we starving 1 million kids?
Those are the images that they flash across the screen, and I sit there as a human being,
Yeah,
not as a black man, just a human being.
yeah,
I'm like, how does anybody watch these images of these children
yes,
starving to death
yeah.
or being bombed? And I just don't understand it from a human perspective
Well,
of how we let this happen.
yeah, because this is years and years of consent to do this. If it was a group of Muslims bombing and starving 2 million Jews, the world wouldn't allow it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But we have built such a hatred and such a misunderstanding of Muslims, right, that we can do this to a group of children because we've done this before,
Yeah.
right? And I think what's different about Gaza now than compared to everything else, and why this is really confronting, is because what's happening to Gaza is what happened in the 19th century in colonialism. It's what they did to the Native Americans here.
Mm.
It's what they did to black people in Africa, in the Congo, and King Leopold of Belgium, right? And
It's amazing King Leopold is not talked about.
yeah,
More Hitler, people talk about Hitler, but Leopold is left out of these conversations. Some of the worst atrocities ever committed to a group.
You know, just to show, like, you know, medicine. There are certain medical advancements that we have had because of King Leopold funding medical advances, because he killed so many people in the Congo that there wasn't enough slaves left. So he actually had to invest in providing healthcare in the Congo, not because he wanted to save it, because he was killing so many of them, right? And that's where I think some of these big companies, I don't want to say them in case I get them wrong, but there's some big, huge pharmaceutical companies that have come from the back of experimentations on these people in Congo. But this is what I mean about, like, what Gaza is, and this is why it evokes such emotions in so many people. It evokes emotions in so many people because what we're seeing in Gaza is a mirror reflection of what's happened in history to all these other groups of people. And that's why Black people see their struggle in the Palestinian struggle. That's why Native Americans see their struggle in the Palestinian struggle. That's why the LGBTQ community see their struggle in the Palestinian struggle. That's why so many people see their struggle within the Palestinian, because you're watching children being shot in the head. You're watching people being starved. And then we're being gaslit and told there's no starvation. But Netanyahu came in and said there's no starvation going on in Gaza. You've got every UN agency and human rights organization saying starvation is being used as a weapon of war. There's famine in Gaza, and he's denying it. You know, you have the GHF lines, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, where they are mowing down people with guns to shoot them and starve them to death. And when you're watching this on TV, when you're watching starved women and children being funneled into cages and being shot down, these are images that we never thought we would see. And what then you're also seeing is you're seeing videos of soldiers laughing as they're shooting women and children, right? And what a lot of people do is this evokes such a strong emotion, especially within minority communities all over the world and the global South, because we've all experienced this. And we look at the Palestinians and we're seeing the brutality of what settler colonialism is, of what happens if you ever dare to rise up against the slave master, what will happen to you.
Solomon, I know Solomon, we're over time. I know Solomon's got
we're going
somebody else, but I got.
I was gonna let you close it out.
Dr. Mo shared with me that since he's been so outspoken, he's been on TV. There were several different television programs. Since he's been so outspoken for what's happening in Gaza and his own personal experiences, you've been currently receiving death threats. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Currently receiving death threats, and he's here today. So I want to give you my highest praise. You're a much better human being than I ever was. I aspire to be like you.
So let me say this
much.
before we close out. first of all, thank you to Dr.
Dr.
Nerenberg, Dr. Mohammed for being here. These hours go by so fast. It's so much we did not touch on, and it's hard to touch on. So I would hope the two of you would agree to come back for part 2 so we can try to get more in depth into this conversation. Even though a lot was touched on, it was so much more that I wanted to talk about. And again, I'm speaking as a human being. I hope we get sometime soon get to a place of peace where, like I said, I can't.
Thanks,
the children aspect of it, for a father who has 4 girls, to watch these children dying and suffering is a lot. And I pray that we can eventually get to a place of peace. I hope the two of you will come back. Dr. Mo, Dr. Nerenberg, thank you so much for your time. I can't thank it enough. Pops, anything else before we shut it down?
No, I know we got to kick us out of here because we got somebody else, but I can't thank you both enough for being, both these guys are my friends. I want to make that perfectly clear. They are both my friends because that's what Mama Fletcher taught me. And I believe that's what we must come together. We must. And this is one way of doing it. We sit down and talk to each other. And
so on that note, we normally end this show by saying F y'all, but today I think we're going to change that up. Today, instead of saying F y'all, I just ask that we pray for peace.
Absolutely.
For what's going on in Gaza and all the innocent children and innocent lives, period, that are being lost on both sides.
And you know, I just want to say as well to like the Dr. Nerenberg, like I see your humanity, and even if I disagree with you on certain aspects of certain things, it doesn't take away from the humanity that I see in you.
All right, Dr. There you go.
Well, I want to just say to Dr. Mohammed that I respect you. I love you as my cousin. And I really appreciated your input. I think we have a pretty different perspective, but I think that it was a peaceful talk, and
that's what we wanted from the beginning.
Yeah, we presented a view of what's and it certainly shows the diversity of viewpoints on the same event, and also I want to say how much respect and admiration I have for you as a man and for what you're doing to save lives. And we all do the best we can. It's never enough because we could always do more. So exactly, I could have done more, could have saved that woman. You do the best you can. We could always do more because there's no end to how much good we could do. If you would have saved him and her, there could have been somebody else grab your other leg that you couldn't save. So that goes with the territory. We could all do more, no matter how much we do. And God bless you, you've done an enormous amount.
You're right. We all could do more. And I think just from me and CT's perspective, just having this platform and being able to do shows like this is us doing our part. I mean, I'm sure there's more we could probably do, but that's a start. And we'll start there. And then, like I said, we'll end this show. Thank you guys so much. Season 3 is in full effect. We got some more guests coming up here in the next few weeks that you guys will be very excited to hear about, and we'll bring that to you. Thank you guys so much. F Y'all Podcast, CT Fletcher. You know what it is, and we'll see you on the next episode.